I took kind of pieces from that and made it work. It had to work, no choice. It
Yeah.
was me and three kids. So,
On today's episode, we are featuring Leanne Burgess, who is the founder and CEO of Social Vibe Marketing Incorporated, which she started in 2014. Her company provides a myriad of services that include business development, strategy, SEO, data analytics, and cybersecurity services. Leanne has formed strategic partnerships with several well established tech companies in Long Island, New York, where her bonds have led her to grow her business to new heights. She's also an active member and on the board of directors for Long Island Women in Tech. Never too shy to add to her extensive knowledge base, Leanne has earned relevant certifications at Harvard Business School Online and MIT. As a single mother of three young children and a powerhouse business professional, Leanne is a shining example of what can be achieved by anyone with dedication, hard work, tenacity, and perseverance. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the exciting journey of Leanne Burgess. How are you, Leanne?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so glad to finally have you on the podcast.
I really appreciate you inviting me. I know this is like a long time in the making, too.
Yeah,
We've talked about it for some time.
yeah. Perhaps you are the longest that I've pursued anyone to be on the podcast. So I'm glad that
I
you're
feel so
finally here.
honored.
No, it's just
I'm
you have such
honored.
an interesting story. I'm really excited to explore it. So yeah, so let's get into it. My first
Okay.
question to you is, what appealed to you about digital marketing that you chose to make it your full time career?
So that's an interesting question and a really great question because it wasn't my first choice. I actually have a science background. And after having kids, we wanted to have something where we could be present for our kids and also have a business where we can create our own schedule. And so it was like, we were selling these like eco friendly products, building e commerce sites, and then it turned into, well, we need to also market those products. So that kind of appealed to me. And I liked, kind of finding out ways to make it work well and, how to like, target certain customers by interest and, building out those personas and that. And
Yeah,
that kind of turned into, starting out on my own in the digital marketing business 7 years ago. So my goal was I loved helping other people be able to achieve those goals and, you know, basically navigate the landscape of the internet and, how to reach their customers.
yeah.
I kept it really short. I could have talked about that for a long time.
No, I mean, feel free to add some more if you want. I mean, there is no time restriction, so if you want to say something, go ahead.
Sure. It just it's an ever evolving landscape, the digital marketing world, and it's actually evolved into other things, not just marketing. It became, social media management. It became reputation management, SEO, and how to be found. So there's multi layers to that approach.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And this
Mhm.
position, I remember it didn't exist when I graduated from my undergrad in 2011. And social
Mhm.
media marketing was something that just people did. People just shared the post, and there wasn't any metrics behind it. There wasn't any goal behind it. And couple of years after that, I began seeing proper posts about, hey, we want to hire a social media manager to achieve these goals. And only then it struck me that, okay,
Mhm.
this is something that people are consciously investing behind, and it's something that is going to determine which brands stand out in the future. So yeah, I think 7 years back was the perfect time for you to jump into this and understand where it's going. So I'm glad that
Yep.
turned something that didn't begin as a conscious effort and turned that into a full-time career. So that's
Yeah.
great.
There was another like huge variable at that time in my life. I had just gotten divorced and it was difficult, because I needed to be present for my kids. And so I took what I knew and I enjoyed doing and turned it into a business. So that was the like pivot point for me from going to working, in a family kind of business setting. I had my brother, my former husband, that made up our previous business of we had that for about 5 years. And I took kind of pieces from that and made it work. It had to work, no choice. It
Yeah.
was me and 3 kids. So, you know,
Yeah, it's hard, I mean, especially starting something from the beginning, after
hmm
when you've gone through a difficult experience like that. And yeah, and having kids, of course, makes it much more harder because you have to constantly put them first and think about their future and their well-being before you could think about yourself. That's something that comes with being a parent. So I don't know much about that because I don't have a wife or a kid, not yet. But I understand in the sense that it could be a challenging uh, area to begin with, and
yeah.
especially doing a lot of things on your own. So yeah, that's great that you were able to do that.
They were my motivation.
Yeah. So now, of course, as a digital marketing professional, you deal with a lot of different kind of clients and different kind of projects, and they all have different expectations.
Yep.
How do you deal with difficult clients when setting the expectations for a particular project?
So it's a good question because it always comes up, and you always have, times where you might not agree on something. And I've had it happen too. The best approach is clear communication and setting those expectations in the beginning. So if something doesn't go right, and that might be out of your control completely, it could be something, hey, Google did a new algorithm update and your rankings fell. Well, I didn't do that. But just being able to communicate that in a way that is not emotional, where if somebody does get upset, you have to take emotion out of that equation and speak to them and just, kind of be very transparent and in what's happening. But that communication is really key. That's like huge. And without that, I mean, it's likely to fail your relationship with your client. And I think the communication and the trust and the transparency is all key elements for a really great relationship. And all your clients and life is built on that.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And in any sort of business setting, whether it's working with clients or your customers, you will always
hmm
find people who are unreasonable in their approach, and that's not how things work. And so I remember being part of my
Right.
family business back in India. Customers would just come up with unrealistic ideas of what a product is supposed to do. And so
hmm
for example, they would say that, hey, this micro oven that I bought from you 5 days ago has stopped working now. And you probe deeper into it and you realize that stuff that is not supposed to be put into an oven, they did put there, so like metal and other stuff. And no wonder it stopped working. So they're like, well, what's the point of a
Right.
microwave if it couldn't heat stuff in metal? I'm like, that's the whole point, right? That's not how the mechanics of it work altogether. So yeah, and they just like wouldn't budge. They would just feel that, okay, it's the company that messed up, and
Yeah,
they are right all the way through. And so it's hard to reason with them. And
yeah,
as you said, I think the best approach is to keep your calm and communicate as effectively as you could, that you know
yeah.
perhaps
Yeah.
uh,
It could become very easy to like escalate that and kind of go head to head and argue with them, but it doesn't get you anywhere. It just doesn't. And, you know, um, like you were saying with that person who was kind of hard headed and not wanting to understand that, you're going to come across that not just in business, but in life where there's certain people you can't make happy. And you just have to kind of accept it.
Yeah, yeah, that's another interesting point because for a very long time in my life I lived it in a way that I have to please others to have that validation that, oh, I'm a
Hmm.
good friend, I'm a good brother, I'm a good son, things like that. uh, but
Hmm.
realizing that sometimes doing that and trying to keep everybody else happy makes you unhappy, and you have to sort of
Right.
strike a balance there. Like, of course you need to care for your friends and your family members, but it doesn't have to come at the expense of you feeling miserable all the time. So yeah, I
I've
think,
learned that too.
yeah.
Quite
So,
recently.
yeah, and so yeah, just life keeps throwing these curveballs at us from time to time, and all
Hmm.
you could do is be strong, learn, and move on from it.
That's
So
right.
that's good. Yeah. Now, of course, you are a business owner. So, in your
Hmm.
opinion, what are some of the challenges unique to female entrepreneurs?
So I think the first would be we're starting off in a male dominated driven kind of business world. So there's that, but we're changing that. It's definitely changing now. But aside from that, there's a family connection too, because most women starting out, a lot of times they have a family to take care of too. So that's a huge challenge. And I can speak firsthand on that because I mean, that has been a challenge, but it's also a challenge and a huge motivator too. That you want to also do something to help better your family too. I mean, there's other elements to that too, like lack of VC funding towards women. There's not as many women decision makers at the higher levels. And so, having that more diverse team definitely helps move that forward. So,
Yeah, yeah. And that's so true because most of the female entrepreneurs that I know either began as, something that they observed post their marriage or post having kids, and they felt that they could make a
mhm,
difference. And so that idea then turned into a business. And my mom personally,
right.
she started her own business only 10 years back. So having these kids who are really, like, I was 20 back then, and she was starting a business then.
Mhm,
So it was something that she really felt that, oh, over the years I have seen the designs evolve, and so I want to have a fashion brand that reflects that.
mhm,
And that was her motivation. But it's sad that even after, like, being equally capable or sometimes even more capable than their male counterparts, female founders
mhm.
do not find the required funding to take their ideas to next level. And I think that is
That's
gradually
right.
changing, as in, like, companies are trying to
Mhm.
have 50-50 ratio representation and things as such. But yeah, I think we need more voices to kind of amplify this understanding that female leaders are
Yeah,
capable of doing amazing things, and we need to support them because you cannot
that's right.
achieve anything if you are only supporting 50% of the population.
That's right. And that's a whole other perspective that you miss out on when you don't include women or just,
Yeah,
having a truly diverse team. Just having only male decision makers on a board, you're going to be with the same kind of results over and over. But there's more companies coming up now and like VC firms that are women owned and driven. And the goal is to help other women, obtain that funding. But it's
yeah,
good. It's definitely a lot of changes recently, and it's nice to see it.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I've seen case studies over case studies of marketing or PR nightmares when they don't, like,
Mhm.
guys, bunch of guys got together for a female oriented ad and came across as tone deaf, or not very well thought out idea. So yeah, I mean, in terms of, like, damage control also, there was nothing that they could do much. So it's better to just have females on board and chime in their opinion rather than do damage
Yes,
control later. So it's that.
I
Now,
totally agree.
yeah. So, uh, Now, of course, success in digital marketing is contingent upon how consistently you could deliver uh, the results, whatever the expectations of the clients
Mhm.
be. So, how do you ensure that you deliver a successful result at the end of a marketing campaign, or a goal that a client sets for you?
So, that's that key word you just said was goal. And setting those smart goals in the beginning and, beginning of a campaign or a working relationship is really key because, not having a goal in place, well, what are you working towards? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to change? So that's number one is setting out that goal. What are your KPIs? What are you measuring? You really can't grow what you don't measure. So, and I am like huge on analytics and data. And it's not even just like, all right, I have really good analytics and data. If you can't read and interpret it and then make smart decisions off of it, you're kind of in trouble. I think every person in digital marketing or in business, you really need to know and understand how data works and how to use it. And it's not just a 100% take only what the data tells us. I mean, you could kind of take a holistic approach and see, like how things are working with your client, get their input to what things they want to focus on. So being able to measure those KPIs that you set out to be like, all right, these are what I'm going to really focus on to make sure that I achieve that goal that we set. And also, things can kind of change along the way. It's good to have short term goals and those long term goals. And you might have to make adjustments in campaigns and things along the way to achieve that goal. So it's not going to be like this set and forget kind of approach. And what works with my clients is that transparency and communication, and then also knowing those clear goals that you have and being able to measure them and interpret them, and of course being able to show some kind of return on the investment or return on their ad spend. So it's and maybe visualizing it too and showing them, this is where we went from point A to point B, and this is how we got there.
Yeah, I think, so much of decisions today are data driven that you sort of need to understand the ins and out of how to read and
Mhm.
interpret data, and also understand, what it is trying to tell you. Because, I mean, that's only one part of the decision making, that, okay, data suggests a particular trend, or, gives you a
Mhm.
particular insight. But that has to be seen in the broader context of what you're trying to achieve. And,
Right.
sometimes failure is not really a failure. I was doing
Mhm.
research a bit earlier today, and you see how Apple acquired Beats as to be sort of this new era in their existence of like going all chips in with the audio technology, and they did for that time. But
Mhm.
gradually they have sort of cut down investment in the idea, and the whole point from the beginning was to you know create their own AirPods, and AirPods Pro and stuff like that, from taking that
Mhm.
from Beats, and implementing that in their own ecosystem under their own branding. So it's like it just came up in a discussion that, hey man, we have not seen like a really good Beats headphone come out in a long time. So I dug a bit deeper into it, and it's like, okay, that was a big acquisition that Apple made, but it was only to kind of take it apart and
Mhm.
implement that in their own technology. So it's that. So a lot of people might say that, hey, Beats was a failure, but then if you look at the broader context of what Apple achieved out of it, that's a success. And so that, from
That's
a
right.
marketing standpoint, gave it a huge boost, because Apple was then seen post acquisition that, oh, it's that cool hip company that is trying to appeal to Gen Zs and millennials, by having
Mhm.
that flair in their products. So it's that. And another great point that you mentioned is that priorities change along the way. As you measure more results,
Mhm.
the likelihood of achieving or missing your goals become more visible. And so that pivot that needs to happen, that is important. Like, so adaptability is huge for any kind of project.
Right. I mean, take the pandemic that, you know, turned everything around for everybody. I mean, you could have this like really great long-term goal, and then something like a global pandemic comes along and you have to adapt to it. Otherwise, you're most likely going to fail, so that adaptability is really huge. And to be able to kind of like, change how your approach is and stay afloat is also really like huge too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's another great point because so many businesses went under during this pandemic because they were not, of course, planning
Hmm.
for it, so they were completely blindsided by its impact. And yeah, so that's great. Right. So now we spoke about representation, some time back. Now you are part of Women in Tech Network. What are some of the initiatives undertaken by Women in Tech to ensure higher female representation, or more specifically, what has been your role, with this network, and how have you been making the difference?
So it's Long Island Women in Tech is the organization. It's a nonprofit on Long Island, and we have over 650 members. That comprises of women and also male allies, which is really important when you're trying to drive more diversity and get more women involved in tech. So so some of the things that we offer are, well, there's a safe space. There's no judgment zone. It's not just for women that are in tech. It's for women that also want to maybe change careers and get into tech. We would help with some like mentorship if there's maybe something that you really want to get into. Maybe it's Python or, engineering or something. There's somebody in the group that knows it really well and can help you. Um, we also have this amazing Slack channel, and we have some like insider job openings that come out there. So we try to get more women in those roles. So to help bring more awareness and just kind of expand on women in these tech related jobs. So and I will happily share that information because I think everyone should be on it if you're in the tech world. There's and it's really great because there's like these, like kind of like an insider person that can refer you to get into these really great jobs. And so my role there, and I got involved over 3 years ago. I just wanted to get more involved into like volunteering and helping in this space because I really felt very passionate about it. So I help with their social media, and and like any kind of like creating like event graphics and all that fun stuff. So and we have a really great group of board members along with me, and it's been really great.
I think it's great that you have insider job openings and mentorship available for the skills that are currently applicable in the industry. And I think each industry, I feel, needs to
Hmm.
have a strong nonprofit like that highlights uh, these opportunities for women because uh, it's because most of
Hmm.
the businesses tend to become male dominated. It's important to have organizations that represent uh, females that can be part of the industry and make the difference. I worked with a nonprofit called Media by Women, and it's a New York based
Hmm.
nonprofit organization that serves as a hub of resources for women who want to pursue a career in media. And of course, in the light of the whole Me Too movement and lack of female representation, like just look at the number of female film directors. It's like you'll hardly find any, and so that is again another issue that this organization tries to tackle by connecting the existing filmmakers or existing female leaders
Hmm.
with women who want to be part of the industry so that they could have an insight into how to become successful. So yeah, I think it's great that you have a Slack channel where all the resources are pulled and everybody can benefit from that. So yeah, that's
That's
exciting.
really awesome too. I love that. I love those initiatives. It's really great. And we also do like lean coffee meetups. I don't know if you're familiar with lean coffee,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's basically a very structured discussion. and it's just fun. It's different every time. There's different people, different points of views coming in, and we do it. Well, we pivoted and started doing it virtually because of the pandemic. We're actually going to be starting in person again later this month in a small group, outside, socially distanced. But it's just such a fun, like, event type of thing to get together with a group of men and women that, you can kind of just, vote on the topics that you want to discuss and get some extra insight there. And so, aside from those, we also do lunch and learns, and that's virtual. And we do panel discussions too, which have been like huge. And of course, we haven't done them since before COVID, but it's always a really great turnout and a really great discussion.
Yeah, yeah. I've always
You'll have to
wanted to
come to
do.
one of them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
flying to India for a couple of months in about 10 days. So I
Oh,
can I
nice.
can join virtually if you happen to have one between them. But yeah, for sure, once I
Yeah.
return, I will be
Hmm.
happy to be a part of it and just be involved with the community and share my thoughts or opinion.
Hmm.
And hopefully that will be of value to someone. But yeah, so for sure, that's really kind of you to think of
We
me
would love
to.
to have you.
Yeah, yeah. And I always wanted to do a live version of the Afflatus where we can like go to a restaurant or a cafe and
Hmm.
like book out a space and just have like invite people who can come over and then have a discussion in person about where the industry is going, what are the trends right now, and how like somebody trying to become a
Hmm.
social media marketing manager or digital marketing expert could do right now, once they're out of college or in college,
Hmm.
to make sure that they have an offer or an idea of their own that they could work on. So yeah, I would love to invite you for that as well. Hopefully we could put together a panel and have a bunch of people
Yeah.
somewhere in the city. So yeah, I'll keep you posted. But now that the city has come back to life,
Count me in.
yeah, that certainly seems like
Yeah,
a
that's
viable
right.
thing to do. Yeah, so that would be fun for sure. Right now, of course, being an entrepreneur, it can be a very consuming experience. It takes a lot of time and effort to get things going, and for a long time there is no sort of clear direction.
Hmm.
So how do you ensure that you not burn out and you also have enough time to dedicate towards your family? How do you strike that work life balance?
So, good question. Because that was a huge, huge struggle for me, especially in the very beginning. I remember being on like client calls at home. I had my kids at the time were like my oldest was 5, and then 4 and 2, 3 years old. And so it was me and
Mm.
them, and I'd be on a call and I would try to like stay away from them so I could, not have kid chatter in the background. But like, that should be a normal these days anyway. Like, yes, we have families, we have kids, it happens. But I clearly remember in the very beginning going like in the house, outside the house while they're chasing me, trying to conduct a call with a client. Um, I had hired a business coach very early on, and that was like the best thing I did. Jeff Brinson, he was amazing. We still work together. This is 2015. um, you know, he basically told me in the beginning there's really no like work life balance per se. The best thing you can do is prioritize your time and say like what's important now is acronyms of like when, all right, so maybe early in the day I have, these three major tasks that have to get done before a certain time. I started scheduling my time, and it wasn't just scheduling your work, it's also scheduling your free time, your family time. And I never did that before. I just kind of was like, all right, my day's crazy. I have to get kids from like, school to wherever, friends. That was the biggest thing, was actually making a schedule for myself. And I mean, it's not always perfect, like things come up that you don't always account for or can't really predict. But for the most part, it's helped so much to just say, I know from like this time to this time, I blocked out this time where I'm only doing these tasks. And then, maybe from 3 o'clock till whatever time I'm with my kids. And I just make sure I schedule out those two things because both business and my family are very important. So that's how I've balanced it. I still get burned out every so often. You sometimes get a fuller plate than you expected or asked for, and you just kind of adapt to that and do the best you can, but just kind of, get back on track the next day.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you bring up a very important point because, I think just yesterday I shared on my social media that how, like, in the months following the launch of my company, I, on an average, got about 4.5 hours of sleep. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're
Oh,
not really sort of disengaged. Like, you cannot have a like an absolute separation of like, okay, this is work, this is life. Like, you do not clock out at 5 p.m. and then
right.
you cook and like watch Netflix and stuff like that. When you're an entrepreneur, you're always trying to kind of like, the
Yep.
ideas are always at the back of your mind, and so you are trying to like disengage from that, but it's just that they don't let you go, like at least in the initial stages
Yeah.
when you are planning a lot of things and there are a lot of variables to consider. uh, and so that was that time, and so I felt it was important to
Yep.
share because a lot of people have this rosy-eyed picture of what an entrepreneurship is, that okay, we'll come up with a business plan, get VC funding, and in 5 years we'll be billionaires. And I mean, well, some people do make it like seem that easy, but the reality is that 99%
Yeah.
of it won't happen that way. So yeah, and so
That's
I
right.
don't think it's for everybody. Like, entrepreneurship is fun, and if you really enjoy pursuing ideas and bringing things together, then you'll love it. But some people are just
Hmm.
naturally wired to function better in a corporate environment where they have the structure, they have the resources, and they could make things
Hmm.
possible. uh, People who don't like uncertainty
Yep.
or the unstructuredness of things, then yeah, entrepreneurship will give you anxiety, a lot of anxiety. So, but yeah, I
You're absolutely right. And I did see your post with that, the 4 hours of sleep on average, and that's pretty accurate. I mean, I'm kind of at that point. Well, I kind of changed in the last like maybe a week or so. I'm like, I need to get a little bit more than 4 hours these days.
yeah,
Um, but you're absolutely right. And, I think a lot of people have, going into a business thinking, well, I don't like the 9 to 5. Maybe they don't like that grind. If you go into your own business, it's going to be more than 9 to 5. Just expect to double that time, at least in the first few years. And I think the biggest thing is that you have to really love what you're doing. Like, you have to have a passion for it. If you're in the business just for the money, you will fail 100% because you will
yeah,
get so burned out and tired that that's your only driving factor is the money. It's not going to work. It's just not. I'll save everyone the time there. If you want to start a business, make sure you have something that you truly, truly love and you're passionate about, and then just go for it. If it's just for the money and you see someone else selling something and making, 30,000, 40,000 a month, if it seems too good to be true and easy, everyone would be doing it. It's not going to work.
yeah, yeah. And I think a subsection of the subsection of population also gets this swayed away by people, this online marketing gurus that out of their
Mhm.
Ferraris or Maseratis are making videos about like, in just 15 minutes I'm going to show you a blueprint for success that you can work only 2 hours a week and make extra $5,000 a month. I'm like, what? So it's that
I think they make their money by selling that kind of like idea, and that's probably their like quick, like scheme, I guess. But and this too, like you really have to put like blood, sweat, and tears into it for it to work. And if it was
yeah,
something that seems so easy to do and too good to be true, well, it is. It's too good to be true. It's not. Those like get rich quick schemes, um,
yeah,
they just they fail, they flop. It's nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that it's my goal to, create like an SNL type comedy sketch about this on fake online marketing guys, and just, tear them apart, saying that, okay, well, don't believe everything that they say. Like, do your research, and if you feel that after all of that, like putting $5,000 for their
Hmm.
secret blueprint course is your way to go, then by all means do it. It's your money. But I mean, don't expect that, okay, you'll start making like 2 grand, a week after undertaking that course. Like, you'll still have to put in those hours, and you might even get there.
That's
But
right.
yeah, don't think that, just putting in money will be your substitute for hard work, because a lot of people lose a lot of hard-earned money that way. And it's
Yeah,
just
that's
sad to
right.
see that, people fall for these traps. So yeah, just just do your research.
That's right.
Now, of course, digital marketing industry is one of those places that keeps on evolving, and sometimes much quicker than we could keep up. So
Hmm.
if there's one thing you could change about the digital marketing industry, what would it be?
You know, this is a tough question because there's more than one thing that I would change. I guess first, maybe that um, perception of digital marketers. I think that there's so many people who claim to be digital marketers and don't fully understand what that means. And I've had this happen with clients in the past that they would leave another company who claimed to do all these things and they were going to, like, they overpromised, underdelivered. And then they come to me with that like bad feeling already that, oh, now we're going to somebody else who's going to tell us this. But um, it's it happens so often that there's so many like frauds out there,
Yeah.
um, that it makes it a little bit difficult in the beginning. I tell everybody up front that I will always be 100% transparent with you. Your analytics and your results are not going to always be like, rainbows and butterflies. And I'm not going to cherry pick data and show you the best numbers just so you can say, yeah, maybe this is doing well. But I think that's like one huge thing I would change is that perception. How to change it, maybe a little bit difficult. Weed out those people somehow. But that's a huge one. But it's always going to change. I mean, there's always changes with like Google and algorithms and data privacy that affects how we can market for our clients. So that's probably my biggest one. It's more of a little bit of a pet peeve for me because I'm like, I'm so honest that I would never do anything to take advantage of a client or a person that it just bothers me. I just truly want to help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where, I sort of not lived through that experience, but I was in the midst
Hmm.
of, like, this uh, bad reputation that the bankers got in like post 2008 financial crisis. So my first job out of
Hmm.
college in 2011 was at JP Morgan, and I used to work in investment banking. So you could sense that energy, like, especially people who have, like, seen the first hand devastating effects of
Hmm.
losing their savings, or just losing their money in the 2008 crisis. And sometimes when you connect with people and say that, yeah, I work in finance and I work in investment banking, they're like, are you gonna like create something else that's gonna
Hmm.
ruin my savings or something? It's just sort of naturally assumed. So yeah, and yeah, I mean,
Yep.
the Wall Street greed kind of was left unchecked, and that led to the disaster that it led to. And so it's that.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna say that the industry was not in the fault. Of course, they were trying to make as much money as possible, and with
Hmm.
little regard to people and their money. So yeah, it's that. And this is what I feel, that people who are doing genuine proper work when it comes to online marketing need to amplify their voices and
Hmm.
reach out to people and say that, hey, we are not one of those guys that's gonna scam you into, like, believing that we will deliver you a certain result and then won't. So the preconceived notions that people would
Yeah.
have, needs to be addressed. And I mean, I have a friend, a high school friend, that just did his MBA in marketing, and he did it from one of the best management institutes in
Hmm.
India. So I know he's legit, like, he understands the industry and how he could help companies grow and achieve those goals. So not like this, of course, this idea that every social media marketer or every digital marketer is out there to scam you out of money, of course, is, like, unwarranted. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's just that so many people have recently
Right.
tried to scam other people, that people have become overly cautious. Like, my dad still hates financial markets because he got scammed out of a lot of money back in early 90s by someone who promised him that I'm gonna double your money in 6 months, and he fell for it, and essentially lost all
Oh,
the money.
wow.
So so
Oh.
so it was a huge loss, and that
Oh,
left
that's
such a deep
terrible. That's so
impression.
terrible.
Yeah, it left such a deep scar on him that even now he has difficulty trusting anybody who works in finance. It was, like, very tricky for him to
Mhm.
see that, okay, my son is getting his first job in finance, whereas all my life I've gone about, like,
Yeah.
talking shit about them. So it's that. But no, I agree. And that's
That's
the
so funny.
reason why for season 3 of this podcast, I have featured so many legit people that have, that are in the marketing industry
Mhm.
right now. So you're probably the third person, that I have from marketing. And it's it's just fascinating to me how they work, and the ideas that they come up with, and it's just exciting. So yeah, I feel you when you say that this impression needs to go away.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to do my bit by featuring people that are legit professionals and highlighting their stories, so that at least in
Yep.
my small social circle, people are aware that, okay, not everybody is a scammer that works in that industry. Right. So
It's interesting. I had met a local restaurant near us, and one of my favorites. And it was during the pandemic, and I was trying to order online, and I noticed their site wasn't secure. And I'm a digger naturally, and I look into things like
mm,
what's happening. Is that site hacked, or and I start doing like a scan. So I find out that, first of all, their site forwards to the domain name of this company, this marketing company in Long Island here. And the site is riddled with malware. Like, it's just, you wouldn't want to
wow.
send your customers there to place an order. So, like, kind of feeling bad for this company, I went in and I'm like, what's going on with this company? They're taking advantage of you. First of all, their site's hacked. Your site domain name forwards to theirs, and you
Right.
literally just have a subfolder on their website, and that's your business presence. So they had been like newer owners. They took over from whatever the previous owner was doing, and they reached out to this guy, and he was like, I mean, scammer 1,000,000% horrible. And I'm like, it's like people like this that give the rest of us who are trying to do the right thing kind of a bad name. So it turned out this other business didn't even realize that they were a client of theirs and said, "Oh, you know what? You actually owe me for hosting," and charged them several $100s from like 2 years before, some crazy thing. So the business owner, trying to just, be on the up and up and do the right thing, pays it. And I tell them, you need your own site. You need access and ownership of all your business assets. And that's another thing that I'm huge on. If it's your business, you should have complete admin, access on everything, ownership on everything. I'm not going to hold it hostage from you and do some crazy thing, because that has happened so many times with clients before coming to me. So, long story short, I worked it out with them that I built them a new website, and was able to help them get away from this other guy. And their sales went up. I mean, the morale went up because now they had full control over their site. They had a beautiful, like, easy to navigate site where people can easily order. And, their analytics boosted too because they had a lot more
Yeah.
people coming. It was a nicer site, no malware, secure.
Yeah.
And it's like, I pinged the IP of that domain and found that there's about 80 something other businesses that they're doing the same exact thing to locally. And I'm thinking,
Mm.
this is the pandemic. A lot of these are small mom and pop shops who are probably suffering big time. And then you have a company like this completely taking advantage. And that's the worst time to have that kind of company in place. So I'm working on something now to help businesses like that to just be able to provide a very easy, like turnkey kind of option where they could have full access and ownership and manage everything themselves in house if they want to. So it's just to kind of like fight off people like that. I feel terrible about that kind of thing. It's just so not what I would ever do.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great story, and I'm glad that you shared that because small businesses especially struggle with having a proper website. Like so many times, I would feel like checking out a new restaurant, and
Hmm.
I would go on to their website, and all they would have is just a menu and a phone number. So, I mean, of course, they want to minimize that online management uh, of their
Hmm.
you know whatever menu or other things that they post on. So essentially, if their business is coming from
Hmm.
something like Seamless and Uber Eats, all they need is just a menu to be up there, which is the same as
Yep.
what you would see on any other website. So that's one because they naturally sort of feel that it's too complicated to handle and not worth the time of business, so they stay away. And so when they do try to outsource it or
Hmm.
give somebody else the ownership of it, then they usually end up in things like this. And so yeah, restaurants especially struggle with having quality website that
Yeah.
truly reflects their personality, and doing it effectively and managing it and updating it and maintaining it from time to time is a time consuming process. So yeah, we need more people like you to kind of
Oh yes.
offer that insight and say that, okay, I'm going to take care of it and it will bring down your cost as well as improve your business. Because I designed
Hmm.
my own company's website. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it everything on my own. I'm going to reflect the personality, I'm going to choose the font, pictures, everything, which I did. And but I didn't realize how
Hmm.
much of a time consuming effort it would be. And I thought because I've studied software engineering, I can custom code
Yep.
widgets and write the code on the back end, it will be easier. But that just makes it more complicated than, because you're trying to think like, okay, should I go with like my custom thing on this or should I just go with what website offers? So yeah, but I would eventually sort of like hand it to someone else who knows these things and who does this day in and day out, rather than carving time out of my schedule to work on that.
Yep.
So yeah, I think you're adding great value to businesses that way.
Yeah.
So
Hey, if you ever need help, I'm happy to help you if you ever need help.
yeah, 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 yeah. So
It's
my,
what I
my
do.
website is on Squarespace. So like, once it's up there, there's
Hmm.
not much to like play around with.
Hmm.
My website is pretty minimal that way. But yes, as the new shows keep coming up and things start, getting more complicated, I'll let you take it over and then, handle it from there.
Hmm.
Because, we are trying to sell popcorn and t-shirts online now. So that's whole another universe of doing e-commerce. Uh, so yeah.
That's awesome. We're kind of the same in having multiple like businesses. I have, my the marketing, and I also have a retro vintage style dress e-commerce site too that I started in 10 years ago. So I have
Hmm.
that, and I, get into other little side hustles because, that's just I have a lot of interests.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great. When I saw that how amazing you are
Mhm.
at henna tattoos, the mehndi that we put during weddings and special occasions in India. It's just I'm like, wow. I didn't see that coming from you. Like I didn't expect that you would be so good at it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, definitely
Thank you.
impressive, and yeah, keep pursuing those interests, because that's just such an amazing thing. Because like now I know that, okay, whenever I get married and I am throwing like a party or reception for my friends here, who am I gonna call to like handle the henna and everything else? So yeah, yeah, that would be fun.
I would be happy to. I mean it's such a fun I've always loved henna, and it really wasn't until more recently that I started actually doing it. Um it's just another like outlet for me. I love the creative. I love just design and doing things that, like for me, it's just fun. I love the cultural aspect of things. You know, that's just something that's always interests me. Learning and knowing about other cultures. Like my kids, my former husband was from Albania, and I am like very interested in learning about all types of things that pertain to that country. And having spent, several months over there, it's just interesting to learn and, kind of try to help instill that in the kids and, kind of keep that culture alive. So it's just another layer of kind of things that interest me. Um,
Yeah.
and then, going back to like the henna, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I also am a makeup artist. Did I mention that? I don't know if I did.
Uh, I'm
Maybe I
I'm
did.
aware, but
But
you didn't
I
mention it
started
on the
that when my
podcast. So
I couldn't remember, like, did I mention that? No. But yeah, that it was something that I did right after my first daughter was born in 2008, and I got certified in this school in Manhattan, and I did like really awesome like gigs. I did photo shoots. I did a pilot show for MTV Fashion Week. I worked with
yeah,
this amazing photographer, Keith Major, who was works for ESPN and worked with like, singers like Alicia Keys. And so it was really, really interesting. Also went to one of the Knicks players' houses to do makeup there. And so it was really just a fun thing. And I loved just the creative aspect and kind of, making somebody happy like a bride, or that was a huge part too that I did, was a lot of bridal. So I guess that kind of ties into that henna, that I could still, work with bridal in some aspect there too.
yeah, yeah. That's so great. You wear so many hats, and you are so good at each one of them, that it's impressive that you are able to do all of these things. And yeah, you spoke about you mispronounce like miss like you said Photoshop instead of photo shoot. And I was just gonna I was like just laughing in my mind that the way fashion works these days, it's more Photoshop than photo shoot. So
That's right.
so you didn't get it wrong, that way.
That's
But
funny. I
yeah,
work with Adobe products, so I guess it kind of makes sense that that slipped out.
yeah, yeah. But
That's funny.
yeah, that's great. Like all these side hustles are so important. And I keep doing voiceover works, and editing works or consulting work. Of course, now with my company it's full time, but in the
Mhm.
initial stages, it's like, yeah, some friend would say that, hey, I'm going to start my own podcast, and I just brainstorm with them for an hour and come up with two or three recommendations that give them clarity of what the podcast should be about.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's fun.
Well,
So
that was actually our first time speaking, was you helping me learn more about podcasts. And that
yeah,
was for the nonprofit organization, Long Island Women in Tech, because we had talked about starting one. And for me, I was like, I don't even know the first thing about how to launch a podcast. And so I've actually repeated what you've said to not just this organization, but to clients. I've given them your advice, And it was very sound and great advice, which was, I mean, from the start, of course, know what you're going to be speaking about, and having, 4 to 5 episodes recorded before you start and before you launch. And that was um, a huge piece of advice to go forward with.
Yeah.
So thank you, because that was very helpful to me too.
No, of course, I'm happy to help. And yeah, anytime I see an opportunity like the way you did with the restaurant, I try to put my best foot
Mhm.
forward and give them the best advice so that they could achieve what they're trying to achieve. And yeah, so I'm glad I was able to make a difference there. So yeah, thank you so much for considering me in the first place, given that, you could have reached out to so many other people or so many other research that you could have done on your own, but I was happy to help you out. We are in, of course, the month of June, and everybody knows that people graduate in May. It's a big graduation season. So now a lot of them, of course, are
Mhm.
looking to be the part of digital marketing industry. What would your advice be to people who are, trying to begin their career in digital marketing, or are already in the industry but trying to move forward or make a pivot within the industry?
So I would say first, and this applies to other businesses and industries too, is to understand and define your why. Why are you getting into it? What's appealing to you about it? And that's probably the short answer on that. But the second follow up would be, I would really define a niche that you want to focus on, because the digital marketing space is very saturated. There are a ton of digital marketers out there. Internet marketing, online web marketing, whatever you want to call it. But having a niche really helps to, make you stand out from the crowd. If you're
Yeah,
somebody that, really has a passion for healthcare, let's say, and you really love that industry and you want to work within that space, um, focusing your digital marketing business or career um, on just healthcare definitely helps you, because you're easily able to speak that language when you're talking to a new client, and you know how to position them, and you know which platforms work well for them you know
yeah,
so that would be probably the biggest piece of advice, would be to find your niche, dominate it, and then you can move to the next niche. Like, I have my niche very defined, and it's been like that, and it's actually evolved kind of organically. And you kind of test out other industries, and you might really love it, might really resonate with you and align with you. So that would be the biggest thing going forward, is just knowing who you're targeting. So that's what I
yeah.
would say.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a wonderful advice because a lot of people try to do everything at once, and that sort of either
Hmm.
becomes overwhelming or they spread themselves out too thin. And I mean, I consider myself who kind of went through that phase where I felt like, okay, I could do everything that is possible to do in filmmaking. So I could be the editor, I could be the director, I could be the producer, until it happened so on one project that I was actually doing all that, like being a director, a producer. I had to act for a couple of scenes because one of the actors dropped out. And just being on set and taking care of people while being on my feet for 13 hours kind of really helped me understand that, okay, this whole idea of being one man army is flawed and you need other people to help you out. So it's not worth like killing yourself trying to do all of these things together because you won't be
That's
good at
right.
it. So then I focused like,
That's
okay,
right.
what could be one thing that I could focus on, and then eventually, or like I could be the writer first and then producer, and then like balance between those two. But I cannot do both the things at the same time. So I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
I'll put bulk of my efforts in writing, and then once the writing is done, then I can focus on the production part. And if it requires me to direct, then I'll do that. But if not, then somebody else can also do it. I'm okay with that. So that really gave me an understanding of, what you need to do when you're first starting out. Like, pick one thing, become good at it, and then
Hmm.
transfer those talents in other things if you could. uh, so yeah, I think that's a great
Yep.
advice.